Hey guys, this is Danny, also known as iAnnihilate, and here's going to be my pub tier list for mids in the current patch, which is 7.31D. Um, this doesn't entirely translate to competitive or whatever as like a disclaimer. It's just, for high MMR pubs, maybe even you can get some out of it for lower MMR pubs. As a general thing, the lower in MMR you go, heroes kind of change in value, and you can honestly pick kind of anything. But if you want to know like what's currently popular at the top of the top or close to the top, I'll be going through that now. Um, and I guess just as another disclaimer too, I'm gonna try and make some more YouTube content. Go ahead and subscribe. Maybe tell me what other type of stuff you want to see. Maybe other role tier lists. Maybe like some tips and tricks or stuff. I don't know. But yeah, let's get into it. So for now, I think the hero, like, let's go over the tiers. So S is like always good. Um, Even if you're countered, you're gonna have a game that's fine. That's why you can like early phase them in captain's mode. Even these heroes are just the strongest of the strongest for mid. I'd argue that the strongest of the strongest in other roles are probably better right now. Like if you look at competitive play, these heroes aren't typically like banned a lot, but they're picked a lot because they're not like the top 8 or top 10 heroes in the game, but they're very close. They're like borderline bannable in the first phase. So first off, we have Puck. I think you can pick Puck in literally any game, and either even when you're lane countered, you can pretty much go even with water runes, and you have two spells to farm with, so it's very hard to deny a Puck. Your base damage, your armor and stuff is kind of bad in lane, but you're ranged with two ranged spells, and rushing Witchblade, either skipping Brown Boots or going Brown Boots Witchblade, is just very, very strong. You hit a very early timing. The heroes that typically like beat you in lane, their timings are a little later. So like let's say like a Kunkka or something, pretty strong against Puck in lane, but he's not gonna do anything really until BKB. Like he can't hit you with any of his spells. You might be able to kill him or his team earlier with Witchblade because he won't have BKB yet. Alina's kind of the same deal where she's stronger than you in lane, farms faster, but her like 15 or 16-minute BKB is like 5 or 6 minutes after your Witchblade a lot of the time, and with like help from your team or just killing other people, like it's just so strong. There's no way to stop this hero from getting a good Witchblade timing and kind of taking over the early game. Um, Similarly, this is sort of a newer thing for me. I like drafted up a tier list a couple days ago to see like what my thoughts would be for heroes I don't play too often too. And something that's moved up for me a lot has been Tiny. Going Echo Saber before Blink is like a new kind of innovation I've seen in the past week or so, maybe even a little before that if I was late to the party. And it seems that mid Tiny is just super strong. 4 Tiny is also really strong. This hero is just pickable in probably any game. Normally, you were a little gimmicky by going like Brown Boots Blink. If they didn't have burstable heroes or you didn't have people to play with in the early game, it kind of sucked. But when you go like Treads Echo Saber, it doesn't matter how much HP they have. You get to just play the game, and you can even farm. Like you're not kind of playing to that one style gimmick Blink only Tiny, and I think that makes them a lot more versatile. The Aghanims recently got buffed, where it has a slow on every tree that gets thrown. So that's also been popular for mid Tiny versus going like a Shard and crit route. You can just get Echo Saber, Blink with your Treads, into Aghanims or BKB into Aghanims, and then Daedalus, and play like kind of. I think it was more like a 2018 maybe Tiny. I don't know. It was like a while ago when that build was really really popular before the Shard. Um, Lastly, in the S tier, where I don't really think like there's been like 1 out of 150 Zeus games or whatever I played lately where I felt like I couldn't do much, and it was against like a TA carry where we had like no carry of our own. But for the most part, like the only hero I probably don't really want to see is Templar Assassin as Zeus, and that's kind of for the same for a lot of mid heroes. Like Puck and Tiny don't really want to see TA either, but it's kind of up to your other heroes to deal with that hero anyway. I don't think that like there's a way to like draft a mid that's always good against TA last pick or something. So I think Zeus is incredibly strong. The jump is probably going to get nerfed. I think it's way too powerful. It actually secures denies in lanes. Maxing Q and E, so 404 lets you farm pretty quickly. You get an early Kaya shard into Kaya Sange or E Blade, and your damage is just insane throughout the game, especially with the shard. And having like around 2,000, like if you have Kai Assange, the HP talent at 15, I believe it is, and level 4 jump, it's like you're not the Zeus from like a while ago. You're not just gonna die instantly if they jump on you. Like Kai Assange makes you pretty tanky. It almost feels like trying to kill a Void Spirit. It's like a lot more slippery, and his damage output is just insane. Couple the fact it's like the same thing as kind of Puck and even Tiny to an extent, where there really isn't a lane matchup you see where you're like, man, I guess I'm just gonna feed or something. Like you're always gonna get farm with your spells and water runes. You're very hard to gank, similar to Puck, just because you can jump away, and it just makes the hero pretty much pickable in every game. Similar to Tiny as well, it can also be ran as a 4, so it's very, very popular in competitive play right now as well. I've played against many teams that have first phased this hero, and that's the same for all three of these heroes. So, like I said at the beginning, it's not necessarily going to be reflective of competitive play as we move down the list, but I think that there's a reason why those heroes are so good in both competitive play and pubs right now. And then we'll move on to A tier. So A tier is a little shallow for me right now. I feel like if you asked me what are the good mid heroes like a year and a half ago, I would have a much bigger list at the top. But the change to Kaya Sanj and E-Blade being both Kaya items kind of hurt a lot of heroes that wanted to build both. So like something like a Void Spirit who would want both. Even Puck in some games would want both. It's just like you're not gonna play off of an E-Blade combo with Kai Sanj. You have to pick one. It really hurts Void Spirit the most, probably. A lot of the spell amp talents got taken away from the Intiros as well. Quap was broken, Storm was broke. Like Quap was broken earlier in the year, last year, got nerfed a lot. Storm was really broken most recently, got nerfed a lot. And it's kind of been the same story for like every single mid one by one. Even Lena, her new passive is much, much worse than her old passive. But it is what it is. I still think that if we're going to talk about a hero that is just good in most games, kind of similar to the previous three, where you don't really care what you're laning against. There are some obvious counters to Coddle, I think, and unlike the other three heroes, it definitely feels like the guy you're laning against has an easier time in the early game, where you're not really contesting denies at all as Coddle. You're kind of just giving them free farm, whereas Tiny can contest denies, Zeus can contest denies. Puck is a lot more aggro earlier on without items. So like Coddle really wants to rush his vessel or even like travels in some game if he has heroes to play around. It just feels a little bit weaker than the other three. He's good in most games. Um, not as broken as he was a couple patches ago where you saw it a lot. I think 9 innovated a lot on the hero before as well. The 15 damage or so he got nerfed on his Q level 1 and 2. I can't remember how small the damage nerf was, but it was actually a big deal because there's like certain breakpoints for nuking waves. And I've like I think it's like 2 or 3 hits and then a Q at certain levels, to set up the range creep or the melee creeps, and the extra 15 damage went a long way for him to secure the entire wave with his blast. And overall, he's just easier to play against. I think the hero is still very, very strong though. Similarly, um, before the most recent patch, I think I had Pango in S tier, and Tiny wouldn't be there, and maybe not Zeus because he's kind of a newer thing too. But I think previously it would have been Caudle and Pango at the very top, and then I'm not sure if Puck was as popular or not, but essentially the big nerf to Pango was that you can't permastun people with roll anymore, and there's a lot of gimmicky stuff you could do with the shard and the Yules to permastun people before they BKB. Because when you roll blink on somebody, it's an instant stun, and if you can chain like 3 of those, that's usually enough to kill somebody at any point in the game before they can BKB. Now the enemy team always has a chance to get their BKB off after the first roll stun. So you can still initiate with roll. It's still very strong. It's like an instant 2-second stun at level 18 or something like that, and your teammates can follow up. But it's not as easy as like perma stunning their entire team in Roche before they can BKB. Still very strong with the early diffusal timing. Just kind of hurt a lot by the other heroes that are popular. So like, yes, the shard roll up versus Coil is very strong in the early game, but you still have to buy it. And Puck is going to hit his Witchblade timing probably before your Diffusal timing in most games. He always has the edge with the Silence and the Coil on you in most of the game. And then at 25, he counters you now. So, like, it sucks that probably the best hero in the patch, is just good against you. Similarly, like Tiny's pretty good at bursting a Pango. It's also pretty hard for Pango to kill a Tiny later on. They don't really interact with each other very well. Tiny can set up on the Pango, but Pango has a kind of a hard time dealing with Tiny. And then Zeus, it's pretty awkward on the Pango side to jump a Zeus these days with the Heavenly Jump, and burst damage is king against Pango. If you can stun him just once and then burst him before his roll, it's incredibly strong. The other thing about Zeus that's a little underrated versus these Blink heroes is like if you're about to start a fight and use Zeus ult, you cancel Pango's Blink. A lot of his strength at the start of the fight is starting up with the roll and then blinking in. So again, like I don't think Zeus counters Pango at all or anything like that, but it's definitely not um like super Pango favored or anything like that. And then lastly, and like good in most games, I would put Lina. I don't think there's like a matchup she suffers in mid at all. I don't think there's a single bad matchup for her. I think she doesn't like playing against Puck, Tiny, and to some extent Zeus all that much, but the hero's just going to be consistent in every single game, regardless of the heroes. If you just have bots, BKB, Silver Edge, Satanic, you're very hard to kill throughout most of the game. Your damage is very consistent. With travels, if you get to your like travels BKB pretty early without dying, you're probably going to win. And not to say that if that doesn't happen, you can't win. It's just the hero is very strong with her timings throughout the game, and it snowballs really hard. It's just a hero that you can lose gas on compared to the other heroes. Like I don't think you're gonna be like a level 18 Puck with 10k net worth is way more useful than a level 18 Lina with 10k net worth. But as Lina gets more and more gold, she's just gonna be incredibly strong. So it's one of those heroes you definitely have to keep up and farm with throughout the game. The other thing, and this goes for mostly for competitive play, where Lina has been kind of popular, but a lot of carries have been picked in the off lane since the last major. So like Razors, even Beastmasters or Timbers take a lot of farm. Sometimes Viper. I'm forgetting a couple of the offlaners, but like Razor's like the big one that OG ran a lot. And when you have like, I guess Dawnbreaker would be another example. When you have more of like a farming offlane carry offlane type of hero, it's really hard to make a Lina work. It's too greedy. Whereas like the heroes that can make more with worse, so like a Void Spirit or an Ember Spirit or a Puck, Tiny even, Zeus, like they just work so much better as kind of like an offlane for mid. So that's why she wouldn't be higher than A. Even I'd put her at the bottom of A. I think she's better than B. Like, but not so much like close to like not even close to S, if that makes sense. There's just not too many heroes I'd put up here. And then this is where the bulk of the mid heroes I think fall into this patch. I think right at the top of B is Batrider. I think there's been a lot of tankier strength heroes in my games, slower lineups, and Batrider is very good in long fights against tanky heroes. The sticky napalms keep stacking up. He kites them very well. He also has like a BKB piercing disable for some of the heroes. He's catch for something like, you know, it's if Puck has Lincolns, you're not catching it. But like before Lincolns or to catch a Zeus, he's catch. He doesn't have very good matchups mid on average, but he has some good ones. Like Kunkka's very good for you. Pudge mid is probably really good for you. Other than that, like all the heroes above him, except maybe Caudle, are gonna give you a decently hard time. Tiny's probably not bad for you, but the main issue Bat has is that if you get to level 3 or 4 and 5, you're very, very strong. So, like, if you could just skip the first 5 minutes of the game, you will counter Tiny super hard. You'll just sticky napalm him a couple times with level 3 goop, get him. But Tiny has, like, double your damage in a tree in the early game, so he's usually a level ahead of you eventually. And it's just, if you just really suffer in the early waves. Same thing against a Zeus or a Lina, or in some, like, Puck might be okay for you just because his base damage is so low. But Puck is also very good against Bat later on with Coil and stuff, and like it's same thing as Lina, where like if you get your travels BKB, or even some people are going drum into BKB and then drum boots, you feel very, very strong in the mid game. But some of these other heroes just come online a little faster, and it hurts you. I wouldn't say like I think this is one of the most popular heroes on Dota 2 Pro Tracker. I think it has like 1,000 games played in the past 8 days or something. Like it's probably like top five most picked mids. But I don't think that really reflects on how strong the hero is compared to the other mids. I think it's mostly because he counters a lot of the meta heroes, so it feels like it's a good back game. And the other thing about those kind of statistics you have to be careful for is a lot of the times mids last pick and they don't see their core matchup mid, and a lot of the time, like I think 5 out of my last 10 games, Puck's banned, Zeus is banned. Like all the heroes above are just banned. So you have to choose between like Lina, Bat, Coddle's usually not banned, Pango's sometimes banned, and a lot of these B heroes that we'll go over, and he does very well against them. So it's like kind of a unique situation where a lot of the heroes above him are really good, but they're usually banned in pubs, so you don't have to worry about it. Next off, and I'll do the ordering of these maybe a bit better as we get more of the heroes in the B tier, but next off, I think I put Kunkka. I think Kunkka works very well this patch, depending on what kind of carry you have. It's a nice hero that can set up for um, it's a nice team fighting mid that can farm pretty quickly. It has some decent matchups mid. It has some catch. A lot of the heroes that are good against him aren't picked that much. Like Storm was really good against Kunkka. He kind of got nerfed into Oblivion. Um, Batrider's one you probably have to look out for a bit, but you don't mind Tiny. You don't really mind Zeus that much or Puck. Uh, like there's not much you're really scared of. It's more like you pick it when you're okay sitting back and farming, and Lina's kind of the same way where it's not something that you want to play super aggro with. You kind of want to have the Medusa or the Luna on your team, some sort of ranged right clicker that just wants team fight on their team later on in the game and to hit like a strong mid game timing. So you have like your BKB into AC by 20 to 25 minutes. That combos really well with Medusa's Manta Scotty. And it like depends on what other heroes are in the game too. You don't really want to pick Kunkka if they have 5 different ways of dodging X. So like if they have Shadow Demon saves for your X combo, they have a Morphling that can waveform away, Storm Spirit that can jump away, Void Spirit kind of is the one exception because if he like Void Spirit needs to use his jumps aggressively a lot of the time to go in, and if you X him after that, he's kind of screwed. Ember Spirit's another good hero against Kunkka for the same reason, where like he has 5 different ways of getting out of your X combo. So those are the things you'd want to watch out for on Kunkka. Next off, one of my favorite heroes is Void Spirit. Um, Similar to Puck, like he's kind of just a shittier version of Puck right now, which is like sad. Where like you're also usually rushing a Witchblade, but you can't do it every game. Like if you're against Puck, normally you want an earlier Ags, or same thing against Ember, you want like a Yules or an Ags to catch them. So like they get to do the fast Witchblade kill your team type of stuff on Puck, or Ember can kind of just play normal items and you have to go for a Yules, which doesn't feel as good. You're more of like set up for damage. Like combos a lot better with Grimstroke than the other 2 heroes, than Puck or Ember that I mentioned. It's more of like combos well with your team. Very stable laner. I don't think there's too many bad matchups. Like unless you run into Monkey King or something by accident, or like someone counterpicks you. And even then, it's a hero that does a lot with little farm and a lot of levels. So as long as you don't die, a lot of the times you're gonna do more on the map than the guy who counterpicks. Like if they have a Huskar or a Monkey King mid, if you just don't die and you have okay farm, like you lose 60-40 or even 65-35 on farm, but you have like your level 6 when he's 7, you can rotate, they're not as strong with levels, stuff like that. Very, very good hero. Not so good against like tankier heroes, he's very burst dependent, but overall, like good. And like this is the one hero people tend to pick against Puck as well, just because it's very good at catching him. The Q catches him out of Yules or out of his phase shifts almost always. I think like if they blink perfectly out of phase shift, sometimes they get out, but you can always just Yules into Q. Aghanim's also is really annoying for Puck to deal with. Burst counters Puck as well, so it's like you have the control and the burst. And it kind of just speaks volumes to how Void Spirit's just not that strong if I think the best hero in the game is Puck, and the best hero against him is only in B tier, right? So something to keep in mind. A little more situational, not C tier, but a little more matchup dependent. I'll probably put him closer to the bottom of B by the time we put more heroes in. Next, I would put Pudge. I think I might end up putting Pudge higher. I don't think I played it enough to really tell and think of different matchups, but I think in the right game, he's unstoppable, but it's also very easy to kind of get behind and be a little useless. You're very dependent on farm. You really need like phase hood aghanims right away, and you kind of get wrecked by silences or anything that can kite you, because when your third skill is down, the flesh heap, you just get owned super hard. Your hero does damage to itself, obviously. High physical damage heroes also like just destroy you. So it's something to like. Pudge would be the best hero in Dota if he had some way of getting armor. Like if he had a bunch of armor talents or something, like or like one of his items that he built into gave him armor, because like you have to kind of build the hood. Like phase is nice. If it had more armor on it, it would make Pudge a lot stronger too, but you get like I think the last game I played Pudge, I was against TA Slardar, and it was just so hard to play. Like I have to build some sort of plate mail and the spell for the Slardar. I also need a BKB to like get my ulti off in fights. I also need my Aghanims. I need Hood for the early game against their new, like you need a lot in bad games, and I've had to pick it kind of early, or other team picks it for support or some other role. It's like the classic most popular hero in the game, so it's hard to last pick it in the right game. But I think like competitively the hero is pretty strong, and if you can pick it in a good game for it, it's literally unstoppable. So kind of middle of B, I think. Very good on average, and probably higher in a very, very good game. Next off, I have Ember Spirit. I think similar to Void Spirit's problems, they function kind of similarly, where like a lot of the times in competitive play they've been like kind of relegated to the off lane from mid. It's not, they don't get super jacked like with travels anymore in Maelstrom. They do the phase, corrosion, BKB to just do a lot with little gold, and they get relegated like to having less farm on the map when there's a Razor on their team or whatever. I think the hero lanes pretty well against Puck, and like the root kind of helps catch him. Spamming Slight on a zero armor hero like Puck is really nice. It's probably one of the better heroes versus Zeus in the game too, from my experience. Like the root is really nice to catch him as well. However, I think he has too many bad lane matchups to really put him higher, and he definitely felt a lot stronger when his Aghanims was better. He had better item choices previously. He's just received a lot of nerfs, and although they did buff his Sleight of Fist on creeps recently, he's never really like hit that A or S tier feeling for me. And I think in the right game he is an A or an S, but on average he's a B, and there's a lot of games where he feels like a C or a D if you don't really get rolling. There's games I've played where I'm doing the phase corrosion BKB build and I just can't get to BKB. I'm too behind. I just get coiled and ganked, or there's a tiny that can catch me. There's plenty of games where it's like it feels very feast or famine, I guess is the term people use. Another hero I'm gonna put up in this tier, so I'll probably do something like this. Visage is very strong off lane and really any role. And I think it was a lot more popular even like a couple weeks ago or a month ago. I think it's still okay mid. I'm not a Visage player. I can't comfortably put it higher than that. I think it's better in other roles, but it's still fine to play mid. If you're a Visage spammer, you're probably gonna make it's probably gonna feel more like an A or an S to you. The hero is like still incredibly strong right now. I think it functions better the way people are doing it in a side lane, where they like I think it was Tundra that did Doom Visage a lot at the last major, where the Scorched Earth would constantly be charging up the Soul Assumption, and that's like an easier way to play. In mid, you don't even get Soul Assumption usually. You're just playing for your farm and your early birds. But yeah, I think the hero is still pretty strong. Not a bad mid if you're a Visage player and you're finding yourself having to go mid. You're not gonna have a bad time. Other than that, we're gonna get to like situational slash average, and I think I have another big set of heroes here. So Quap is probably like mid to top of C. I think because Puck is so high, and even like tiny to some extent, you're just not gonna have a good game on average on this hero, and she doesn't perform too well against a lot of the tankier heroes, which seem to be meta. She does okay when you're snowballing. It seems hard to snowball. Orchid feels kind of bad to build under. It just doesn't feel like there's a good build. when the Kaya-san shard build was way more powerful before all the nerfs, and it just feels weird. Like your build is situational. The last game I played on it, I went Orchid. I did really well. The game before that, I played on it. I went Kaya Sanj. It didn't go so well for me. I felt like I did no damage. And then previously, before that, I did a Kaya Sanj build, and it felt really good. It felt like I was doing a lot of damage. I could just blink in all the time with my shard. It's just like way, way too situational. I'd say it's very feast or famine, even more than the heroes in B. And it's just like you have to pick it in the perfect game, or not even the perfect, just like a very good game to have some sort of game. It's not something you can just pick regardless of their heroes. You really have to think about it. Similarly, I think Death Prophet's gone up a lot in popularity, even after all of the nerfs. It was super popular and then super not popular. I think the silence is kind of nice against a lot of the meta heroes, and like I said, there's a lot of tanky heroes in the meta, so she should be good with Spirit Siphon. Unfortunately, like I think not having control, like it feels terrible when they last pick Puck and you pick Death Prophet. I think it's CC on my team a couple days ago. He was like mad in all chat the entire game. Like last pick Puck, congrats on your 30 MMR, and he was playing Death Prophet because like when you don't have some sort of catch from mid, it just feels terrible when they pick one of these elusive mids. Other than that, like I think the hero is just very good in the right game. Um, if it was even just a little stronger, I'd put it up in P tier, but it does have glaring weaknesses, and it makes it a lot more situational. Invoker, I'd put in the same shoes. I think it's very close to being B or A. Exort might become a thing if there's like a couple buffs. I think the drum boots are very strong on Exort Invoker with the Forge Spirits. I just think it's just hard to pick Invoker. He's also like typically not very good in an elusive hero meta. So like you're outside of building Orchid, there's no way for you to really interact with a Puck. And other heroes kind of just clown on you. They out farm you. You're just gonna get out farmed by something like Lina or Caudle or Zeus or even Puck or Tiny. If you do the Quaswex build and you have nowhere to rotate to, your game is just kind of like it's just not good in passive games. Which basically means Exort needs to get buffed for it to be good because the games are too passive in the early game, or something has to change for the game tempo to go a lot higher that he can just rush and earn and run around and kill people. It just feels like you can't really do that playstyle. There are some games where I lose to a Quaswex Invoker. It's just the right game for it. Like I think I was Quap versus Quaswex Invoker and a roaming Tiny, and I had a hard time today in my games, but like that's just what it is. It's just very situational. I think the hero's just not very good. It's close to D tier, honestly, but it does have its place in some games. Storm as well, after all the nerfs, I think the hero is like situationally good, but like very situational. And just way, 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 way farther down than he was before. I think the hero's honestly fine. There's just maybe like 10 heroes I'd pick over it, or however many we have on this list. I might even move him further down as we go through more heroes. Um, I just think he doesn't really have a good build to go in the early game right now. Witchblade was okay last patch with all the nulls, but without nulls, there's no like good mana item. Orchid is too weird to build. It was way better with the other build up for him. There's no Bloodstone to go some type of like late game slow scaling storm. It just kind of feels hard to play. Like you're just very mana limited. Next off, I think I'll put Snapfire. Also situational, very, very it's very strange of a mid hero. You're kind of a support in the early game because you're building Blink Shard and then BKB. Like you're just only casting spells, and then late game you become a house. You have the talents that work off your E. You have Daedalus, Satanic. You're one-shotting everybody on the screen. It feels really great. It's just that her timings are kind of slow, and she has to be picked in the right lineup. Like her spells have to be very, very good. I think they're not good enough to catch Puck a lot of the time, and that's going to be a big problem for her. Faceless Void has been pretty popular. They combo really well together with their ult timings. But other than that, it's just kind of situational. That's all there really is to say. Tusk mid, I don't have too much to say about. I think the hero's also situational. I think the Ags was seeing a lot of play. I just don't think it's very good. I'm not that good of a Tusk player either. I haven't played it too much, but I have seen this hero kind of pop off in the right game and under in the right hands. I think I might actually bump him down to D because I just don't think the hero's all that good, but sometimes it's really good. I think that'd be like literally the description of D kind of fits him a lot better. What do we have left here? Viper, Arc Warden. I think Arc Warden I would put in D as well. I've seen some people do some cool stuff with the Aghanim Scepter on this hero, Ags and Octarine Core. Like even just rushing Ags, no boots. But it's just a hero that's like also very, very situational, like more situational than C, and you kind of like it's very bad otherwise. So it's not unplayable or even almost unplayable. It's just very experimental right now, and there's one build for it. So when there's a one build hero that's not that good, it just ends up being D tier. Monkey King, similarly, I just don't think he does enough out of mid. You have to have a perfect matchup, something like versus Void Spirit or Ember, and like even when you have those good matchups as Monkey mid, you just don't affect the map in the same way if you don't snowball and get kills in the lane, and that feels terrible. You never want to be put in a position where just like lasting denying generally isn't enough. And if it's also way easier, like let's say there's a level 6 Ember Spirit or level 6 Void Spirit and you're a level 8 Monkey, honestly you're easier to get ganked than the other way around the other like a lot of the time. So it's just like a very fragile advantage you end up having. It's very draft dependent. Like a tiny Ember Spirit or a tiny Void Spirit will have a much easier time killing Monkey King than the other way around. So you have to pick it like against a melee hero without any roamers in the game. Like they have to have like Warlock plus I don't know, like Winter Wyvern supports or something, like something really strange. But yeah, that'd be my thoughts on that hero. Same thing with Shadow Fiend. This hero's just not good a lot of the time. There's some I picked it once where it was really good and I won. And that's just what these D heroes are. Heroes in the patch can just do his job better. If you want a ranged right clicker with nukes, you just pick Lina. And then you have to change the archetype a bit from there, but there's heroes that just do his job better. When those heroes are banned, he goes up in value, but similar to Invoker or Snapfire, it just feels like you need to have like some type of stunner as your carry a lot of the time, like a void, like a faceless void, or it's just too hard to hit anything in team fights. It's not the same as Lina where you just pop out of Invis, stun somebody, and kill them. You really have to like position yourself a lot better as well. A little less range, a little less speed. But yeah, moving on. OD, good in like 1 out of 100 games. Probably better in a side lane, honestly, like off lane or something. Very underpicked. Not a huge fan of it. And it's really one of those heroes that's either broken or very bad, and right now he's in the very bad stage. There's not much more to talk about other than that. Dragon Knight, I think, is bottom of C. I think he's just better off lane, and even though he's good against Puck, he's just not good enough. Um, really is situational. Like there are some games I would want to pick it. I would just pick a lot of the above heroes over him. He doesn't do as much damage. He doesn't really like he scales okay, but he can do kind of the same thing from the off lane and usually a lot better than he does from mid. You can kind of like pick like even though you're picking its Puck, you're probably not gonna like stop him from farming that much. Probably a better time denying a bunch of creeps from Ember and being able to stun Ember or something. There's probably other matchups that would just be better for you for that type of playstyle with the stun. But he was a lot higher on my list earlier in the year. He just kind of fell off a bit. Viper, kind of close to Dragon Knight, where I feel like it's better to shut down their carry with this hero in the off lane. And he just doesn't move enough around the map. And even though you win your lane, it just doesn't really do much. I'm also missing Necro on my list, actually, I just realized, but I'd put him in the same category as Viper, where you win your lane with 5k net worth at 10 minutes versus a 3.5k net worth Ember or Void Spirit, and the other guy is just going to kill your team, and you're just going to be a Viper or a Necro. And the net worth disparity is not going to really transition into a win a lot of the time. Maybe if you're lower MMR, like 4K, 3K, 2K, 1K, you can just tilt someone out of existence by picking this hero. Like I've coached a lot of 1 to 2Ks where they're like, how do I beat Sniper? This hero's unbeatable. You just lose to Sniper, and it's like the same type of thing where like anything that's a lane dominator tends to perform a lot better because people get really sad when they lose the lane and they don't know how to deal with like losing a lane. But other than that, like it's really just better if you can lane it with a stun or something. Doesn't really benefit that much from the runes either. He does like that hero and Necro and a couple other lane dominators do farm the small camp at least pretty efficiently, but just not good unless it's like a very, very good game for it. They're usually just kind of okay to pick. TA, I'd put like high C, low B. I think just like the heroes I was mentioning, this hero performs better in a side lane, specifically safe lane. It's just a carry. Your meld, ever since it got buffed, it's like not only does it buff you, it buffs the guy you're laning with. So if you have like any sort of Marcy or like Tusk, some auto attacking support with you, even just like a Witch Doctor that can like hit off the minus armor you're dealing to people and set up your melds, you're gonna do so much better in the side lane with it. If you do lane a melee hero mid and you can side blade him and meld him a lot, it's kind of the same thing, but you don't do too much with your XP advantage. Um, you can shut down 2 heroes from the side lane rather than shut down one. Ever since they took denying off refraction, even though she's very good in the game versus like a Puck or a Lena or something, you're not gonna like super hard outlane them without rotation. So it just kind of there's just better heroes to pick usually. There are some games where it's just like an unstoppable TA game and you already have a carry on your team, so you pick TA mid, and that's why I'd put it in like situational or average. I don't think you're gonna really be griefing a game by being TA mid, but there's definitely better heroes you can pick usually, and then sometimes it's just really, really, really good. Tinker, I have an almost unplayable. I heard nothing to say popped off with it in the DPC recently, but I am not a Tinker specialist by any means anymore ever since the reworks, and I don't see anyone else picking this hero. Most people tell me it's terrible. Maybe it's like really, really, really far down in D, where like there's one out of a bajillion games where it's really, really good. Like when nothing to say picked it and did well, but I think the shard kind of sucks, and he just doesn't really like all his builds kind of got nerfed. Not so good against the meta heroes either. Like Zeus is in the meta; it's an insanely good hero at catching Tinker. Puck's also pretty good at catching Tinker. Um, yeah, just like not very good. Honestly, a lot of heroes do his job better. If you're a Tinker specialist, it probably bumps him up a tier or two, but still not like going from F to D is not nearly as good as going from like A to S or B to A, or like where I had Visage. Like if you're a Visage specialist, going like making it so that you're so good at it, it goes up to A or S is like insanely good compared to F to C, right? So yeah, just not that great. Huskar, similar to Viper. There are some games it's really good. I've seen it last picked in the DPC some games. The Aghanims is very, very strong, but it's also one of those heroes that needs a lot of farm and needs a lot of time and doesn't really fit the meta. And it's a lane dominator that doesn't rotate that much, so you're putting your team in an awkward spot. It's very greedy. Just keep, even though it's a lane dominator, it's very greedy, and even though it has catch later on in the game, it's not the same as just picking a classic mid. Just keep that in mind. Leshrac, I think actually is probably B tier. I forgot about him. I'd put him somewhere in the middle below Pudge. I think good in most games, honestly. Good against some of the meta heroes, not all of them. Not so great against like the S tier heroes, which is his main problem. I think he would be closer to A or S if these 3 heroes got nerfed, literally. Um, even Lena's not too terrible. It's not ideal, but if Bat was more popular or like other types of heroes, you don't mind getting stunned on Leshrac. You just don't want to get kited or bursted, and the top 3 heroes are very good at all of those, so something to keep in mind. Eternal Shroud is very strong in Bloodstone on him, but also don't have that much catch for those type of heroes either. Like honestly, it's pretty hard to catch a Zeus even if you blink onto him. Same thing with like a Puck. Meepo, I think, is borderline unplayable. Even if you're a Meepo specialist, it like doesn't go up that high. There's plenty of different reasons why this hero is not good right now. I can't really tell you the super specific ones. Just like as like a brain, or not a brain, as like a like food for thought. every hero has gotten buffed over the years from like new items with actives added to the game or neutral items with actives. He can't really use any of them on his clones, so like he's kind of just slowly being like whatever the opposite of power creep is. Like everyone else is power creeping, he's just power chilling. He's just big chilling, and he's chilled for too long after being nerfed, so it's kind of at the bottom there. Sniper, I think, similar to like other heroes that just carry for mid, but like I'd rather have a TA. So it doesn't feel right putting him in the same category as TA, but I think there are some games where he's pretty good. If you just want to pick it every game, your mode don't care MMR. I think it's probably a little better than Shadow Fiend or OD, if that helps at all. But you're really competing with TA for like your slot or even Alina, and those heroes just do your job way better, unfortunately. Razor, similar to like Viper and stuff, but probably a little higher than these heroes. I think it's mainly an offlaner. Very, very popular offlaner, even carries some games. Not so much because it performs better in a side lane or anything like that. It's just the way the pace of the game goes. You don't have catch for heroes like Puck. You don't really have like great lane matchups right now, and it is a little more awkward to use the link. It's been nerfed so many times that like it doesn't last as long. It's not as easy to use. You auto attack right away, so you aggro the creeps, and it's like hard to get it into the lane in a way where you're getting a lot of denies off of it. It just kind of seems like another one of those treads BKB heroes or phase BKB heroes, and not that other heroes do it better, like a Kunkka with that type of build, or even like Lina going like BKB first or something like that. It's just you'd rather have more catch and early game tempo out of your mid. And if you were to pick a greedier mid, you'd probably want TA or Lina a lot of the time. So it puts you in an awkward spot where like if your hero counters all of their cores, it's probably way better. That'll bump you up the tier list enough to like pick that over something else. It's just on average, he's just not as good. And then Morphling, I think probably below Sniper maybe for mid. It's just for a lot of the reasons I've already mentioned, it's just not that good right now. And there's no E-Blade. E-Blade was like the one build mids went. It's kind of seeing some popularity from safe lane these days. Like it's probably like C to B in the safe lane right now. Maybe some people even rate it higher, but it's just not very easy to make this hero work out of mid. It's very, very greedy. Probably it's a lot greedier than Lina. It's a lot greedier than a Razor. It's a lot greedier than Exort and Valkyrie even probably. So you can make it work in the right game. It's just not gonna work out too well for you. I think the only hero I'm maybe missing is Necro, and he's the same archetype as Razor, where I feel like is better as an offlane lane dominator carry type hero than a mid lane dominator. I think the mid lane dominators are just not that good, especially if you know how to play against them, because you can't move around as much. It's so much easier to just play Puck or Tiny or Void Spirit or Ember, even if you're against one of these Necro or Viper heroes, because you just get to gank people and move around and have earlier timings in the game. That about sums up my tier list for mid this patch. If you guys have any questions, let me know. If you want to see tier lists of other roles, I'm mostly a mid player, but I do know enough about other roles. Yeah, let me know. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Please, please, please. Thank you.